What's up, guys? So a little update on the Corvette. Before I went to Freedom Factory, I noticed a small drop in oil pressure, and the motor being so new, the drop in pressure was expected. It dropped about 10-15 pounds. I guess I didn't really care much about it, seeing it was supposed to be a normal drop. I ended up buying a cutting tool for the filter just to see what was in it. So the second oil change after I got the car back from the shop at NBA Motorsports, I decided just to cut the filter open on the second oil change and just take a peek. I like to change the oil after every event. Obviously the first one was the brake-in oil, so I didn't go to an event. The only thing I did with the car with the brake-in oil was FL2K. That was the day after I got it from the shop. All I did was just slowly drive through the parking lot and the pits and park at the car show area, and then same thing back on the trailer, and then it spent a little bit in the garage. So fast forward to the first time I ever slid the car. First time I slid the car was at the skid pad a couple cities over, and I couldn't go too crazy with the car only because I didn't have power steering. So that kept me from driving aggressively, but it didn't keep me from having fun. After that, the car went back into the garage. I started fixing a couple of things here and there. I had a couple bolts that were missing that I had to replace, a couple nuts that were loose, and you know. The plan was to go to Cletus's burnout competition. I was just gonna go with no power steering since I didn't have the time to fix it. The car decides to die on me before I loaded up on the trailer, so I couldn't make it to that event. And the reason for that was because the nut that goes on the back of the alternator backed out. When I noticed that, I put everything back. Didn't realize that there was one wire missing that goes under the motor to the starter, and of course the fuel pump wouldn't kick on without it. A couple days after that, I realized what was going on. Found the problem, and then it ran. I hear that Freedom Factory is having their first drift night, and of course I ordered my power steering pump. I slap it on, I test the car, it feels amazing. I get the car ready. Right before then, I cut the filter, and when I cut the filter open, I noticed that there was like a gold looking metallic paint, like real thick gold metallic paint looking oil. So of course I panicked a little bit, and then I took a video of it. I sent it to Matt, and then I heard back from him. The response was, it's supposed to be lightly gray, but he also said because the VR1 oil that I run, sometimes it gets, when it gets hot, it would turn to the color I was seeing. So I've never cut a filter open before. I didn't know what the heck I was looking at, but I trusted him, and I ended up just driving. So at Freedom Factory, I do my first lap, it was fine. Then I went for my second lap. Then after that, I started like hearing noises, which turned out to be just from the suspension. So I parked the car, and then I noticed that there was a little bit of oil coming from the bottom. I thought it was going to be my rack, because my rack did leak at some point, but after going through it, it was the oil cooler. One of the lines started to back out, and when I shut the car off, it took pressure off of that line. It leaked a little bit on the ground. Nothing crazy, it only leaked when it was off. However, I did think it was going to be the cause of the oil pressure being lower, because that's when I started seeing the drop a little bit more. So luckily, one of the guys that was parked next to me at the event, he had a trailer full of tools. He ended up helping me with finding some tools so I can sneak in a wrench up to tighten down the AN lines to the oil cooler adapter. I did one more run shortly after that. I loaded up And then from there, I just went home. I started going through the car to see what else could be the problem. I thought maybe there was a kinked line. All I knew was that I didn't want to beat on the car if I was going to hurt the motor, because I only have 12 grand from intake to pan with labor and machine shop, all that included. So to me, that's a pretty pricey motor. I did spend 3 years building this motor just to avoid problems like these, and I wasn't going to beat on it and have fun so it can just blow up and then start from scratch and be down more time than I should be. So going back home, I go through everything's fine, and then I come down to looking at the Holley, which is what reads my oil pressure. I'm thinking maybe the Holley is reading wrong because it's a digital, and I held the throttle at 1500 RPMs, and when it dropped on decel, the Holley would read higher during decel until it hit idle RPMs, and then it would drop down to like the 20s. I called a couple people, they said it should be fine, it's probably the Holley, whatever. Fast forward to clutch kickers. So clutch kickers was a very, very long drive for me because I'm in South Florida. I ended up going up there, and as soon as I unload the car to get teched, I start fueling up. I've never had enough fuel in this car to say I've had a full tank. I've only had maybe 4 or 5 gallons because I've never had an event where I'm in the track for a long time. I start filling it from my aux tank in my truck, and then driving to tech, my buddy Kenny comes up to me and tells me I should shut off the car and points down that I'm leaking a massive amount of fuel. That was my first big problem with the car, aside from a couple loose bolts, missing bolts, and loose nuts and stuff like that. It turned out there was a self-tapper, which I showed in my last video. It was for the fuel pump relay that was placed back there. There was a self-tapper that the shop put through the shield for the gas tank, and instead of putting it on the lower bottom part where there's 2 sheets and it furthers out from the tank, it was put on the one that meets the other sheet, and it was real thin, too close to the tank, and then it punctured it. That was a big problem, and I almost didn't drive, and it could have caused a fire. I started seeing another drop in oil pressure, and finally I get the car back to my house, park it in the garage. I noticed it was just consistently low, so now I'm thinking I definitely need a mechanical gauge. So I ordered a mechanical gauge in hopes that the Holley was just reading wrong. I bought it and just slapped it on, and then of course it's reading the same as the Holley, so that tells me that the Holley was accurate from day one. The motor was definitely hurt, and it only got worse from there. Now, I don't have anywhere near 1,000 miles. It's definitely under 1,000 miles since I got the motor back from the shop. Since to my last event, I want to say it might have 600 miles on the motor, and only 2 events. I posted everything I'd done with the car. It's not enough to cause a motor to go bad. I decided to contact the machine shop that put the motor together. So the car's been sitting for a little bit. All I have to do now is take the motor out, take it to the machine shop, and hopefully they can warranty the motor out, and hopefully we know what caused it so we can avoid that in the future. I did talk to the owner of the machine shop face to face. I told him what was going on, and was okay with me doing the pulling of the motor out myself so I can take it to him, and he was very understanding. He was very, very cool about it. Well, right now it's up to him to let me know, and I guess we'll see from there.